Alright, hey everybody, so I made another marriage board. It's called Me, Myself, and I. So I want to kind of talk about my marriage board today. Basically, wives are really not allowed to just think about themselves. When you think of Proverbs 31, it talks about all the things that wives do. The Proverbs 31 rises up early and provides food for her family. And then it gives if you've never read Proverbs 31, you should turn to Proverbs 31 and read 10 through, I don't know exactly where it ends, but if you read on, it just continues on, and it just talks about all the things that Proverbs 31 woman does. And it just goes on and on and on. And she does, and she does, and she does, and she does. And she does. And Proverbs 31 woman is not selfish. She is not a me, myself, and I type of person. Selfishness is the lack of consideration for others, only caring about oneself and one's own profit. That is not what Proverbs 31 woman is about. That is not what a wife is about. What a wife is about is caring about her household. And so often, there's a lot of wives out there who get appreciated because, they're always taking care of their family's needs. And of course, what happens in society is people only think about their own needs. They don't think about others' needs. But a wife gives, and she 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 gives. And sometimes it feels good to be appreciated, because you're constantly giving, and sometimes people only care about their own needs because they're selfish. It's about them. So Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. And if either of them fall down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who has no one to help them up. There are different ways of being less selfish. To listen, to put your needs last, and a big one is to trade shoes. I know, I go to work, I work 2 jobs, and I go to school, and then I come home and I cook a dinner for my husband every single day. And some days, I'm a little envious because my husband, he goes to work and he comes home and he just sits on his game. And he doesn't have to clean the room. He doesn't have to clean the dishes every day. He doesn't have to cook a dinner meal every day. Those are the things in which I do as a wife. I provide those things as a wife and do those things as a wife. So there are signs of selfishness. How can we learn to be less selfish as a partner? And stop thinking about just me, myself, and I. There's signs of this. There's laziness or believing your partner is always nagging you. I feel so aggravating sometimes, always telling my husband, yeah, well, if you don't pick it up, I'm going to have to do it, if he leaves his towel around, that's a little selfish of him to leave his towel around, but I know he thinks that I'm constantly trying to nag him about maybe that his towel is on the ground, but then, it's going to be my responsibility, for his towel being on the ground. Only seeing your partner's flaws, I have flaws, I have flaws myself, there are things that I do that my partner doesn't like, and I admit to that, your ego, you don't apologize, sometimes we don't apologize, sometimes we don't admit that we're wrong, that we have flaws, that we make mistakes, that we're just thinking about ourselves, sometimes it can be easy to just, think about ourselves because we want what we want when we want it. Today what I did was I worked 16 hours, And before I went to work, I made sure my husband had dinner. And then when I got off of work, I went and I ordered us some food after working 16 hours so that we could have something to eat. You know, I could have came home and not thought about myself at all. I could have just went to bed. But instead, I made sure that my husband had something to eat after working all those hours of work. You know, being selfish is not just thinking about yourself. You know, and even in, you know, certain moments where, like I said, I worked 16 hours. I could have came home, got in bed, and been like, you know, who cares if he ate last night? Who cares if he eats this morning? Who cares if the fridge is empty right now because I'm going grocery shopping on Tuesday? You know, who cares? If he doesn't eat, who cares? You know, but no, that's not what I said. I said, you know what? I know I just worked 16 hours. I know I've been up all night. I did it overnight. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my husband eats because he had tacos last night. And so he needs something to eat this afternoon. You know, I set out some cans of tuna just in case he wanted to eat a tuna sandwich. You know, he could put the mayonnaise in there and the relish and the mustard and make him a tuna sandwich until I return. But I am making sure that he has what it is that he needs as a woman, you know, as his wife, you know, so that he is, you know, not hungry. You know, I was thinking about his needs before my needs. You know, it's kind of like a sacrifice, you know. When we get married, when we get into a relationship, it people don't understand the sacrifice that it is that in which we are making. You know, sometimes we feel like we are giving up a lot of ourselves, but you think about with Christ, when Christ asked you to have a relationship with him, he made a sacrifice to you. He gave up his life, you know. Sacrifices are not always hard easy because you're giving up a lot of the things in which you want the most, you know. You're becoming unselfish. You're going from being selfish to unselfish because you're dying to yourself. You know, you're getting rid of yourself. You know, and sometimes that can be hard. You know, like when you think about when a woman has a baby, you know, she can no longer think about herself. She has to think about that child and that child's need and what the child needs. And you know, she, like right here, if either of them fall down, one can help the other up. Is it going to be easy helping the other person up? The other person may have some weight on them. You know, it might be hard for them to get back up. You know, it's not going to be easy. People think that giving up certain things to love people or build a relationship, that it's going to be easy. It's not easy. It requires selflessness, you know, and that can be hard, you know. That's with, you know, a lot of things. Like I think about my job currently, and I have a job working with a woman who's in a wheelchair. And, you know, when I think about, you know, as I take care of her, I have to be very serving. You know, I have to, it's not about me, it's about her needs and meeting her needs, you know, and I have to be selfless and make sure that I'm considering of her. You know, I'm being considerate of her and her needs and what she needs. And when you're in a relationship, you have to be considerate of your spouse's needs. The wives have to be considerate of their husband's needs, and husbands need to be considerate of their wives' needs. You know, if that means, you know, my husband picking up his towel off the floor, or, you know, if that means that, you know, so me doing certain things that, you know, that I do that would cause my husband to have to, you know, rearrange his life, you know. for me, you know. So we just have to make sure that, you know, sometimes we trade shoes with our partner, you know. Like, I understand that, like, my husband, he doesn't go out as much, you know. And I understand the shoes that he's into, because I don't go out as much either, you know. And, you know, I don't hang out with people either. And, you know, you just try to understand what the other person's going through, you know. You try to understand what they're going through. You know, sometimes we don't understand what the other person's going through because we're not in the other person's shoes, you know, or having to give up what the other person's giving up, you know, because all we do is see what we're giving up versus what the other person's giving up as well. So, I love you guys, and I hope you got something out of this marriage board that I did. Yeah, so, bye y'all.